We all remember that scene in Revenge of the Sith where Palpatine mentions that Darth Plagueis was the Sith Lord who could create life. And that phrase alone sent all of us, especially back when it came out, just spiraling into different theories. Hence the name Star Wars Theory, which spawned a few decades later. Well, really, 11 years later. And one of the most controversial things since that time is the topic of, did Plagueis create Palpatine? And in this video, we're going to debunk that. We're going to explain exactly what happened, because the answer is kind of muddy. It's yes, but it's also no at the same time. We have to look very closely at James Luceno's incredible novel, Darth Plagueis, my favorite Star Wars book. In this book, Plagueis is obsessed, absolutely obsessed, with midichlorians. Something I would have hoped to have seen in the sequel trilogy with George Lucas's original vision, but we didn't get that. However, in this book, he's really into it. His entire life's mission isn't just to conquer death, but to control life itself, create it even. He believes that midichlorians, the microscopic entities responsible for communicating with the Force, can be manipulated to create life from nothing. Throughout the novel, Plagueis conducts experiments very dark and very unnatural. In fact, they almost defy belief. His ultimate goal is to force the midichlorians to spontaneously create a being of pure Force potential. And here's the crazy part, that he actually succeeds in manipulating midichlorians on a deep level, triggering unprecedented disturbances in the Force itself. Well, kind of. Here's an excerpt straight from the novel that clearly hints at Plagueis' success. The Force had struck back against Plagueis and his apprentice, conceiving a child who would bring about the ultimate defeat of the Sith. So in a way, the Force did create Anakin through answering back to Plagueis' manipulations of the midichlorians, by essentially saying, look, we don't like what you're doing, you cannot manipulate the Force, you cannot manipulate midichlorians, so we're going to create the perfect Force being that will defeat the Sith and bring balance to the Force. So let's think about this for a second. The Force itself reacted violently against Plagueis' meddling. If Plagueis hadn't meddled, would Anakin be born? I don't think he would. Now, Luceno makes it clear that Anakin's conception wasn't random. It wasn't destiny acting alone. It was essentially the Force's countermeasure to Plagueis' unnatural experiments. Let me say that again. It was the Force's countermeasure to Plagueis manipulating the Force. Plagueis and Palpatine had unintentionally triggered the Force, literally triggered them to create a powerful being, someone capable of restoring balance. But here's where things get even darker and more interesting in the book. Palpatine himself later acknowledges the possibility that Anakin Skywalker is indirectly their creation, a product of their dark side experiments. Could it be possible that the Force had struck back against them, creating a being of its own design? Palpatine is reflecting here, openly admitting that Anakin's existence could directly be linked to their own actions. This aligns chillingly with Episode 3, where Palpatine is suggesting to Anakin that Darth Plagueis had the power to create life, subtly hinting that Anakin might owe his very existence to Sith meddling, which is funny because there was actually a part in the script for Revenge of the Sith, but George decided to cut it out, where Palpatine says, so you can basically call me your father, because he starts to talk about how they manipulated the Force, him and Plagueis, and how he created Anakin. And so he essentially said, so you could basically call me your father. But George decided it was too on the nose, he likes it a little ambiguous, and he left it out. So, did Plagueis directly, intentionally create Anakin? No, he didn't. But indirectly, absolutely he did. His obsession with midichlorians and his experiments were so extreme that they disrupted the Force's natural balance, prompting it to respond by conceiving a being to correct this imbalance. In other words, Anakin Skywalker, the Chosen One himself, was the unintended consequence of Darth Plagueis' unnatural tampering with life. This revelation completely changes how we view Anakin's destiny. It makes the prophecy of the Chosen One so much deeper. Anakin wasn't just randomly selected by the Force. He was literally born from a cosmic reaction against the Sith's ultimate arrogance. Ironically, the Sith's quest for power and immortality created the very being destined to destroy them. And think about this irony. Plagueis dedicated his entire life to achieving immortality and control, and yet he unknowingly created the very Force user who would ultimately wipe out the Sith. Palpatine himself underestimated the significance of Anakin's creation, arrogantly believing he could control the prophecy. But in the end, the Force proved too powerful and too unpredictable, even for the Sith Lords who believed that they'd mastered it. Here's another thought. If Plagueis indirectly caused Anakin's creation, it also means that every tragedy in Anakin's life, the death of his mother, Padme's death, his transformation into Vader, was a ripple effect of Sith arrogance. The Jedi weren't entirely wrong. Anakin was indeed chosen by the Force to destroy the Sith, but only after unimaginable pain, loss, and darkness. So in a twisted sense, Plagueis did create Anakin, but it wasn't the glorious act of power he imagined. It's kind of like the Force has a sick, twisted way of laughing at everybody. Instead, he unknowingly triggered the Sith's ultimate downfall, but also the downfall of the Jedi Order, mostly. It's tragic, it's poetic, and it shows just how dangerous and uncontrollable the Force truly is when pushed too far. But, as always, I love to leave it to you guys in the comments. What do you think? Do you believe that Darth Plagueis truly created Anakin Skywalker? Or was Anakin's creation simply a Force reaction that even Plagueis couldn't control? Do you think this was the real prophecy, or was there something else that hasn't been made yet? Maybe Anakin wasn't the true chosen one. Maybe the true chosen one is made entirely out of the Force without having to react or push back on someone trying to meddle with it. Maybe it was supposed to create a chosen one on its own time, on its own accord, unprovoked. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. As always, hope you enjoyed this video, and I do have to say, regardless what the theories are, that George Lucas always wanted Anakin to be the chosen one, and he has stated many times that Anakin Skywalker is the chosen one. So if we go out of universe, Anakin is the chosen one, but if we go in universe and try to think amongst ourselves as a Jedi or as a Sith, then we can wonder if really Anakin was the chosen one or not. Anyways, hope you guys had fun with this one. If you haven't subscribed, please do so already, and I will see you all in the next episode of Star Wars Theory. Until then, remember, my fellow Jedi and Sith friends, the Force will be with you always.